Sit back and enjoy Pop Culture Radio with your host, Chris Wakefield.
And on today's show, we have Robin Antar. She is a sculptor and an all-around artist, and she's coming to us live from New York City. Well, Robin, tell us about your artwork and who you are and where people can check out your work.
I am a sculptor. I've been carving stone since 1974, and my work can be seen at the World Wide Web at www.antar.com.
Now, when did you know, as a young kid, that you wanted to go down this path?
When I was a kid, I hated academics, and I knew I wanted to do something creative. What? I didn't know what, but I always knew I wanted to do something creative.
Because sculpture is quite an endeavor to get involved with. I mean, that, power tools and picking out the stone and learning that. I mean, how did you start working in this field? I mean,
in 1974, when I was in high school, I moved to a strange town from Atlantic City. I moved to Brooklyn, and I didn't know anybody. And I took a sculpture class, and I just fell in love with it, and that was it.
Did you find out that you were above average in your abilities, or is this something that you've had to work really, really hard at?
Actually, I found out maybe 4 or 5 years after that, I started teaching. And when I used to pick up a rock, and I just was back in the early days, I would pick up any rock and just create an abstract shape. And I thought anybody could be able to do that. I did not realize that it takes talent to be able to do that. And as I started teaching, I realized that not everybody could do that. But when I first started out, that's how I didn't really have, now it's different years later, but when you first started, I just used to take a rock and without having any preconceived idea, just go and chisel it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. When did you come from a very artistic family? Is there your family, are they artistic too?
My mother painted, and when I was like 16, I moved to New York. She gave me her paint box to go take painting lessons, and I started getting into painting. I got into it. She fell out of it.
So you kind of picked up the mantle for your mom in a weird way.
Yeah, in fact, I bought her another paint box, but she hasn't gone out there and painted yet.
So what does your mom think of your work? Is she pretty proud of you?
Yeah.
Now, you have an amazing... Your work is... I don't even know how to describe it. It reminds me of everything that's good about artwork. It's fun. It's smart. It's very statement-oriented. It's solid. Excuse the pun, because it is made out of stone. But there's something very smart about your work. And I know people might go, what do you mean by that? But explain to us your work. You take objects, and ordinary objects that a lot of us don't even consider in a daily life. We just use them or we throw them away. And you turn those objects, the image of them, into art via stone. Talk a little bit about your work.
Well, I have several lines of work, but in my realistic work, I call it realism in stone. My objective is to take the American icon and make it permanent. In other words, 2,000 years from now, that box of cookies is not going to look like that. So people will have a record. So it's like an archival record of recording in history of American objects. And when I select objects, I like to pick things that are challenging, things that are soft. So things that I could take a hard stone and make them look soft. Before I started doing realism, I used to take a stone and make an abstract knot or a twist. And my goal was always to make the hard stone look soft, like you can untie it.
Mm-hmm.
So now I take a stone, I carve out a jacket, and the jacket looks soft. People don't believe it's stone.
Right.
And then my objective is to pick the American icon. What is America today?
Okay.
And I don't like to do an iPhone because an iPhone doesn't have any organic nature. It's square.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend not to do electronics.
Yeah, because you do bags of chips. You do ketchup. You do ketchup. You do a Levi's jacket. You do boots. You do a Scotch bottle. You do tons of stuff that looks literally like the object, but... I really like the one where you're explaining the chips on your website, where you can see it going from, the raw stone to almost complete, that whole process of how you're sitting there just, and you do it hardcore because you got a face mask, you got a breather, you got...
Oh yeah, you got to wear all the masks.
Yeah, you got stuff flying everywhere. I mean, this is a serious industrial work that you're doing in a way. How did you ever realize, or did you when you're taking your classes or learning, did somebody take you aside and go, hey, this is how you pick out a stone, this is how you pick out your tools? How did this all work?
Well, you learn these. I started out when I was in high school. That's when I used to just do the free forms. I didn't start doing the realism until after college. Actually, I started doing realism in 1998. But before that, I was always doing abstract. But you learn all these things like how to use a tool, what new tool comes out, what dust mask to use, what not to use. You learn all this by your peers. Every year I go to Colorado in the summer and I sculpt. I call it sculpting camp.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like a symposium in the mountains where there's 50 or 60 other carvers doing the same thing that you're doing.
Okay.
Some are more experienced, some are less experienced. And I like to go up there because you have all the vendors that have the tools, and you learn what's new, what came out new this year that they didn't have last year. Oh, they made a new central water feed. This one's lighter, but it's not as powerful. Or, this one gets hot, that one doesn't. You learn about different tools from different people in the trade.
Now, let's say there's a young kid out there that wants to, a young lady or young man that wants to become a sculptor like you. They're listening to this show and they go to your website and they're like, that's what I want to do. How do they start in this field? Is there schools to go to? Is there apprenticeships to work under? I mean, do you have people that work under you as apprentices?
No, I don't have anybody working under me as apprentice. I used to teach for 20 years, but in 1994 I got tired of that.
Gee, I wonder why.
Well, I don't know if I have the patience to teach now.
Right,
but
right.
If I get, once in a while I get students who are really dedicated and really want to learn, I'm not going to turn my back on them. I teach them.
Okay.
But it's a few and far in between because I really, it's a lot of work and you have to have patience and it's a lot of dedication. If anybody's new out there who wants to sculpt, I would recommend the Marble Institute has a symposium in Colorado for 3 weeks during the summer, 3 separate weeks. And you can go there for a week at a time and you can go carve. And they do have beginners.
Okay.
Because really, if you need instruction, you get it. If you don't need instruction and you just want to work, you do it. Because I go there and it's great because nobody bugs me and I just go and I work.
Yeah,
I think they're afraid to go near me.
Well, it's that New York, Brooklyn swagger that you got going. That's why they're afraid of you.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm afraid of you, and I'm all the way on a phone line, so I won't even mess with you.
It's funny you should say that. This one person met someone that I met in Colorado maybe 5-6 years ago. I don't remember how long. And the guy tells the girl, "Oh, yeah, I remember. She told me I was a blank because I didn't have goggles on."
See, your reputation exceeded you.
Yeah, and I probably did yell at the guy if I saw him without wearing goggles because I think it's stupid.
Yeah, because those grinders, I mean, they're spinning around at a high rate of speed. You got little chunks of rock flying around. It's kind of like standing behind a motorcycle and having him floor it, and you have your face down there by his wheel, right?
Right, and also there's no safety guard on those grinders either.
Oh, right.
So before you pick up a grinder, if you have a headache, you don't carve.
Mm.
If you have a toothache, a toe ache, a stomach ache, whatever, if you're not 150% power straight on balanced, you don't pick up that tool.
Okay.
Because you can lose limbs.
Right. Yeah, and when those things take them off, I'm sure that you just can't reattach them, can you?
No, if it goes flying on you, no. And it happened to me once in Colorado. It was very scary.
Oh, okay. Well, we're up against a break, Robin. Why don't you tell people again where they can get a hold of you and your website and see your work?
You can get a hold of me through my website, www.rantar.com, and my contact information is on my website.
All right, we'll be right back after this. Robin, I was wondering during the break, I was thinking about your profession and the amount of dust, the amount of danger, the things that have changed over the last, say, 200 years, let alone the last 40 years with equipment and stuff like that. How do you protect yourself now with all these tools and not breathing in this stuff? And where does safety fall into being a sculptor that works with not only stone, but say these guys out here that are working with metal and welding and pouring stuff and molten stuff? Are most schools and people you work with, do they teach you about how to be safe, or is this something you just have to kind of learn on the job? How does safety come into this field?
Good question. Well, back in the day when I went to college in the 80s, nobody wore a dust mask. I always wore goggles because I'm visually impaired. I'm blind in one eye. That's going to flip you out totally.
Yeah, that does flip me out a little bit.
And so I was always a safety net with wearing goggles. If I go and drill a hole in the wall, I get a pair of goggles. As far as a dust mask, I never wore a dust mask maybe till, when did I graduate? 81, I graduated college. I would say a good 10 years afterwards.
Oh, okay.
15 years afterwards, I did not wear a dust mask. And then when I finally wore a dust mask, I found out about this certain dust mask called the AirMate that I use now with a combination of an SAS safety mask, where it's a combination mask that a welders use, and then I use a battery pack that has a filter, which you're really not supposed to mix two systems together. I do that, or I use the one with the compressor, and I get forced air in my mask.
Okay.
And I wear a complete face shield. You saw it on the videos, I'm sure. They're on my videos on my website.
Now, have you seen people that have become permanently injured from just not doing the common sense stuff that you do?
Thank God I've never seen anybody lose an eye.
Right.
I've heard stories, but I've never seen it, thank God.
And do you think that's just because the industry has put out enough information and quality products so people can be a sculptor and be safe? I mean, because you're talking high-speed implements, you're talking air-powered or, like you said, water-powered pieces of equipment that are running at a huge PSI. Is that because the industry realizes and has enough common sense to put out good quality safety products?
Yeah, well, it's good that the industry has the common sense, but the sculptor has to have their own common sense to put it on.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
I mean, I hire an assistant, and the guy's damn good. He's been carving for 30 years, and I walk in the room, and I say, what the hell are you doing? You're not wearing a mask. And I start killing him.
Right.
I'll kill him. I said, put on the mask. I'm only doing one thing. I said, put on the mask. I kill him. Because sometimes people get so engrossed with what they're doing, they don't care. But it's really dangerous.
Now, how do you transport your stones? Where do you get them? I mean, I know you go up to Colorado, but when you are in New York, in Brooklyn, do you have stones that are brought to your premises? How does that work?
Well, I have a supplier in Kansas. There's another supplier in Canada. There's people all over the place that sell the stone. And usually if I'm doing a specific job that I want a specific color, I will tell them, send me a chip. And then after I get a chip, I have to find out, like one supplier, I know that he tests his stones and they don't have asbestos in it.
Okay.
Another supplier, you might have to test it, depending on what you're doing and what the stone is. Because if the stone has asbestos, you don't want to carve it in your house.
Now, you're talking natural asbestos, not the stuff that, like, I think 3M made, right?
No, I'm talking about natural.
Right, okay.
So certain stones are more prone to have that, and you would have to get them tested or avoid them.
Okay. When you see a stone and it comes to your studio and you're looking at it, is it true for sculptors that work with stone that the stone actually is talking to you? Is that a myth? Is that a reality? Is there a certain amount of conversation? I know it sounds a little bit weird, but is there a certain thing that you kind of see when you see a stone?
Well, it's funny because when I do my abstract, lots of times I will say I want a twist or a knot, but that's its extent of my idea. And then I take the stone, and the stone will say, oh, and I see this shape, the knot's going to bend this way, and I see because there's a groove in the stone or the flow of the form of the stone. Lots of times I'll take things from the natural stone and go with it. But when you're doing like a realistic representational pair of boxing gloves, I'm doing the boxing gloves and they're going to look exactly like the boxing gloves. So if there's something in that stone, I'm going to ignore it because I see my boxing gloves in there. That's what I want to do.
Okay.
So it depends on what type of sculpture you're going to do. When you do the super realism, that doesn't play so much, but when you do the abstract, for me, it plays a lot more. Your
boxing gloves or like the shoes you work on, you actually have lace going through them and everything. Did you ever try to, now the laces I'm assuming, are they real laces or are they carved laces?
No, those are real laces.
Okay.
What I do is on my realistic sculptures, I add parts of the real object with the fake stone object to throw the eye to believe it's real.
Right, yeah, because I was looking at the shoes and I'm like, did she sculpt that lace or is that lace real? And I kept on looking at all of them going, well, that one looks like a real piece of leather. Wait a minute, and it does kind of freak you out because even the stone, I was noticing when you were coloring some of the boots, the pores of the rock kind of lend itself to looking like leather, right?
Well, that's why depending on the stone, depending on the object you want to select, decides on what kind of stone you're going to do. Like if you're doing a diesel jacket, the limestone fits perfect.
Okay.
But if I'm doing Oreo cookies and the bag is plastic and it looks like sort of plasticky, the white marble worked perfect when I stain the white marble blue.
Right, okay.
So depending on like the bottle of scotch, what kind of stone am I going to use? I found honeycomb calcite. So you have to find the stone that depicts the mood of the object, or stain the stone to look like the diesel jacket is stained, the boots are stained.
Yeah, you even have a pair of jeans, and they look like a pair of jeans. It's just like, wow, look at those.
Yeah, the jeans are like the jacket out of the limestone.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. For everybody out there, we're up against another break. You have to check out this work because you blink at it and you can't believe that this is actually chunks of stone because it's things that we would throw, if you were not paying attention and you could walk by it at a store or in your house and you would think that was a real jacket or a pair of shoes, and I'd hate to be the dog that tries to chew on these boots. I tell you that right now. But tell them one more time, Robin, your website and how they can get a hold of you.
My website is www.rantar.com.
And we will be right back. All right, this is Chris Wakefield, and you're listening to Pop Culture Radio, and we are talking to an amazing sculptor that takes rocks from quarries. Just imagine this for a minute. Takes solid, time pressure treated rocks and turns them into bottles of ketchup. Turns them into chip bags. Turns them into cookies. And they look exactly like the objects. The difference is they weigh about 10 times more. But they are, Robin, your work is amazing. I really enjoyed that you come on the show. Tell us a little bit about the downside. Have you ever had something that's coming to an end, a sculpture, something you're working on, and it cracks and breaks and falls apart? Have you had that nightmare happen to you?
I had it once.
What was it that you were working on?
I was working on a sneaker, a giant sneaker.
Okay.
And it was like 90% finished, but I already saw the fracture in the stone. But I kept going. But I didn't trash it to the can.
Okay.
Because the toe cut off. So what I was going to do, which I never did, is have toes sticking out of the boot.
Oh, okay.
Make toes sticking out of the heel, and then put a heel coming out of the shoe. Because you can't. If you have toes, you got to have the heel too.
Right.
So the heel coming out of the whole thing. So you have a heel, an ankle, the sneaker, and the toe sticking out.
Yeah, because you work in bronze too. You don't just work in stone. You work in bronze. You work in metal. You have some wood with, I believe, stone in your Star of David work. You use a lot of different pieces of equipment and material, right? Yeah.
Well, that's the reason I didn't finish his sneaker yet, is because I have to figure out, you're going to laugh, and maybe resin's going to be the material.
Okay.
Because if you have a guy's sneaker and then you have a guy's foot coming in and out of the sneaker, you got to have hair on the toes.
Okay, I see what you're saying, right.
And I didn't figure that piece out yet because it won't look real.
Right.
So it's probably got to be done in some kind of resin or something.
Right. Well, I guess you could, because I used to work at a foundry, I guess you could make the toes out of bronze, and I don't think you can attach hair. You could attach hair to bronze somehow, but I don't. Yeah, that's a tough dilemma because.
Well, they do it in those. If you ever see those guys who do the super realistic figures in resin, they do attach hair. There's a way to do it.
Right.
But it's not my. That's not my. I have to do research in that.
Yeah, it's not your forte yet, but you're going to get there.
Eventually, it's there.
Now let's talk about your metalwork. You do some. It's kind of interesting because, when I talk to you and when I look at your work, it's very industrial, hard stuff. But your work that I saw with your Torah stuff and your metalwork seems very what's the right word? Neat and painstaking. But I know the sculpture is painstaking too. It just doesn't carry the same way your metalwork does. Talk to us a little bit about that personality. How do you bring out that almost jewelry effect with your metalwork? Well,
the metalwork, I should state right off the top, is I designed it. I didn't craft it.
Okay.
There was a silversmith person who did it in the city. His name is Michael Strauss Silver. And these people came to me to design their Sephardic Jewish Torah cases.
Okay.
So I would do a rendering. In one or two of the cases, I actually did a model. And then from the model, it was chased out in silver.
But you still designed it. I mean, it still has that. It does seem like a different personality than what your other work is. But your Star of David stuff has a very feminine quality too.
Okay, that's interesting that you should say that. I don't think no one ever told me my Star of Davids were feminine.
No, they have that like a very beautiful smoothness to them. I guess I
see what you're saying. So it's not like gingerbready, like the waves in the.
It has a softness, a beautifulness. Because like when you look at some modern sculptures, like some of your work has a very rough feel to them. I mean, I didn't touch them, but when you look at them with your eye, they have a very rough. Like if you ran your hand over them, some of your modern stuff, it seems very rough, very coarse. But then when you look at your Star of David stuff, everything looks very smooth and very controlled. It just seems like it's a different personality or a different side of your work. I can tell it's you, but it's almost like you're speaking a little more of a different language.
Well, it is. When I do the abstract, the modern pieces, those are the most expressionistic pieces. That's where I express my gut.
Okay.
In those modern pieces. In the realism, you express your gut, but it's different. You're not expressing your gut in your carving techniques because you have to do it. You got to do it perfect to the object. So it's more. I don't want to use the word craft, but it's a different kind of feeling to sculpt it. You got to be very centered.
Okay.
And then when you sculpt the abstract, you're letting out all your feelings in your guts, and that's where all your expression comes out.
Right. Okay.
It's a whole different. It's different. It's exactly right. What you said. One is much more, polished and a different effect than the realistic.
Right.
The realistic is definitely more controlled.
Working in the field you're working in, being in the sculpture field and working with stone and power tools and all that kind of, it's kind of a macho world. How much has that affected you as an artist? How much has kind of empowered you to prove that you deserve to be there? Has that ever come up in your career so far?
I don't really look at the macho part if I'm using a 5-inch diamond blade, a 7-inch diamond blade. I just do it because that's what I have to do to cut the stone, and I get the job done. When you are out in the field and you go to the, especially when you're out of the state and you're like, all of a sudden you're in New Mexico and you have to make a repair on a sculpture and you go walk into some hardware store that's never seen you before and they look at you with 4 eyes like, what do you want this for?
Right.
I find it pretty humorous. I have a good time with it.
Right.
Or when you go to install a show and the somebody running the place says, "You're female?" It's pretty funny. I mean, I just laugh it off.
Right. Well, and you, I'm assuming that, being from the Bronx, everybody says that you have to be streetwise, living in a major city like New York, and you have to have a certain amount of street knowledge and presence. And then on top of that, you as a person have a very strong personality. So I'm sure when you show up in these small little towns and you have that Brooklyn accent, they're like, what the heck just happened? Who is this? And, because everybody has that idea that everybody that's a mobster talks like you. It's not true, but they watch too much TV. So you roll into some little town in Arizona, and you're probably freaking them out.
Yeah, I did because I'm very blunt.
I can't believe that. I didn't get that at all by interviewing you so far. That's shocking.
I'd go to some symposium and I'll see some guy sculpting stone with an air hammer, and what do you, I don't want to say the word online, but what do you, you're not wearing goggles. What are you, stupid?
Yeah.
I have no patience for that. It's like,
Right.
get with the program. Hello?
Now, I do have a question for you. If you could hang out with two people, okay, past, present, artists, or they don't even have to be artists, anybody in history of mankind, woman, man, artist, whoever, Michelangelo, whatever, and have lunch with them, who would those two people be that you would sit down and want to hang out with for a day?
Rodin, Michelangelo.
Well, there you go. You can't pick two better sculptors than those two guys, right?
Brancusi.
Yeah. Now, if you met Michelangelo and you could bring him to now with power tools, and how much more work do you think he would have got done?
I don't know. He had tons of manpower.
Yeah. I just could imagine, him with all the tools now and just the stones that they would have been able to bring to him, and, all the ideas that would have been finished. I mean, you just think of the tomb of Moses, stuff like that actually would have got done. And it just makes me wonder what all he could have done. Do you ever kind of look at your life that way and go, okay, how much do I want to get done before my hammer falls?
How much do I want to get done before I enter the next world? Good question. I don't know. I didn't get to that point yet.
You're saving it for another day?
I guess I'm too young. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's just it. I mean, what was the famous saying Michelangelo said? Just when I'm starting to understand being an artist, I'm dying. So wasn't that something he said like that?
Something like that. Well, yeah, I didn't even get to thinking of, because there's endless. It's endless of what you could do.
Well, especially nowadays when we have so much information, so many things opened up to us that you can sculpt. Is there a modern sculptor right now that you really look at his work and really appreciate or enjoy?
Yeah, there's a guy I just met through, where did I find this artist? Through the Stonecarver's email list. There's a guy named Alex Sutton, Setton, from Australia.
Oh, okay.
Or actually, I think he's from Amsterdam, but you should look him up. Very, very cool work.
And he's kind of who you're looking at being really impressed by right now, huh?
Yeah, I'm impressed with his work.
Now, is there an object out there, a holy grail object that you want to recreate? Is there a piece of Americana that you would love to put into, no matter the size, just something you would love to create in stone?
Well, I'm working on now. I have to finish it as soon as I get the crane back. Is a 6,000-pound bag of potato chips. Because it's such a mundane object.
Right.
And, like yesterday I'm walking around the armory show, and this guy comes by with a box of potato chips. And I just started laughing to myself because it's such a mundane article.
Right.
That nobody thinks twice about it, and they're eating them like crazy. Maybe one day I'll do it. I want to put it in Central Park.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I mean, that's kind of the point of art, isn't it? Sometimes just to enjoy life and enjoy what's around us, even the mundane, to be thankful for the mundane.
Well, that's my point of why I'm doing the everyday objects, because they're mundane, and most people don't give it don't think twice about the old logo on the Crest toothpaste.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, that's why I'll look back on the internet and I'll see an old thing from my childhood and I'll just go back to those memories of that toy or that cartoon or that thing, that emblem that I remember so vividly that's not even in our minds nowadays. It's always fun to look at those things that kind of take us back to that time.
Yeah, well, when I do my objects, my everyday objects like the tube of Crest, I did the logo from the old Crest. I didn't do the new psychedelic logo with the stripes, and I wanted the plain logo Crest the way they used to have it.
Right. Yeah, I remember that one. Now, if somebody wants to get a commission by you, how do they get a hold of you? How do they, get some artwork from you?
They can email me. My email is robin@rantar.com.
Now, and you do commissions, so if somebody wants a huge bag of chocolate Oreo cookies, you'll hook them up?
I'll hook them up. What I did do is I did one object from every item. In other words, I did a clothes, I did a tube, I did a bag, I did a book. So you could see different objects that what I'm capable of doing.
You know, I'm glad you don't do impersonal items, but one item that seems to have, that's kind of electronic, that's changed our world, would be the remote control of the TV, or maybe just a huge TV. That's probably one that's probably influenced more lately in the last 50 years than anything else, probably. What do you think?
Definitely has influence, but I just don't feel the sculptural challenge.
Yeah.
Because it's not organic. It doesn't have any movement. It's very simple to.
Right.
Well, it's not, I shouldn't say simple to carve, because sometimes the simplest things, a square, is very hard to carve.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I love your work. It's fun, very fun stuff, and very smart. And we really thank you, Robin, for coming on Pop Culture Radio.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin, for coming on the show.
Thank you very much.